This is a short lecture on Sophocles' play Antigone. It's aimed at a higher classical studies class. For those of you who are not in Scotland, that means somewhere between the ages of 16 and 18, so obviously not university standard, but of a good standard nonetheless. I'm going to focus this lecture on how much we think that Antigone is justified in her point of view, and how much her behaviour contributes, I suppose, to the tragic ending of the play. Sophocles' drama Antigone centres around the conflict between an absolute monarch, that's Creon, and his willful niece Antigone. Following the conflict over the disputed rule of Thebes, Antigone's brothers are both killed. One, Eteocles, is killed in defence of the city, and one, Polynices, is killed in an attempt to take it. Polynices, because of his treachery, is forbidden a burial by Creon, and the drama's engine derives from Antigone's belief that this judgment is incorrect. To a contemporary audience of the play, the tension of the values expressed would have been clear. On the one hand, Creon has decreed that a burial for Polynices would be honouring a man guilty of dishonour, and this belief is military and it is political. Antigone, however, insists upon a belief which is more to do with the family, and the crux of the play is set between these two approaches to the same dilemma. In expressing her belief, however, Antigone must confront two forces. First, she is a woman, and to break away from her traditional role is in conflict with the accepted social mores or codes. Second, she is young, and by rejecting Creon's diktat, she is being disrespectful in a society which has reverence for its elders. The degree to which an audience can see Antigone's actions as justified varies according to their perspective. A modern audience, for example, is likely to sympathise with Antigone because she is young and because she is challenging the social order, and our culture often admires rebellion in youth. To a traditional Greek audience, however, she is confronting the fabric of their society. And this is where the difficulty in judging her arrives. On the one hand, she is in the moral right, as she wishes to respect the dead and the gods by burying her brother. She justifies her actions by saying, "I have to please the dead far longer than I need to please the living," which is a beautiful line. On the other hand, she is defying a patriarch and stepping out of her demarcated role as a young girl. When Antigone suggests breaking Creon's decree, Ismene, her sister, is appalled, and she reminds her that we must remember that we were born women. The very notion that Antigone would challenge the male order is outrageous, and much of the play's audience would have been outraged. And that's made explicit by Creon when he later asks Antigone, "Are you not ashamed to think so differently from them?" By them he means other women. It's not merely a question of right or wrong, but it's also a matter of shame. But Antigone, far from being ashamed, she is proud in her defiance, and this makes her character all the more shocking, going so far as to asking her sister to tell everyone that she has defied her uncle. She insists, "Shout it out, proclaim it to everyone." Throughout the play, though, we encounter repeated instances of youth defying age. Antigone's burial of Polynices is the first, and then we see Hymen's conflict with his father, before we finally see Creon himself, who is somewhat at odds with the old seer Tiresias. Each of these conflicts is derived from an inability of the protagonists to see the other's point of view. In this regard, both of the main characters are guilty of pride, of insisting upon their own correctness. Creon sees Antigone not as a grieving sister, but as a willful niece. He sees Hymen not as a compromiser, but as a defiant son. And finally, he cannot see Tiresias as someone telling the truth, he only sees him as another character who is acting in defiance. Indeed, Creon also defies the age of the chorus. On occasion, he has the nerve to call them senile. The conflict here is clear, and it derives from a status quo which has been turned on its head. It's interesting to see that Creon cannot be swayed by a man, That's either Haemon or Tiresias, indicating that while he did at one point in the play proclaim, "A woman will never rule me while I am alive," nor would he give in to instruction or accept instruction from a man either. For Creon, what is central is that his will be done. His rule must be absolute. The pride of Creon in rejecting the point of view of the characters around him exposes his tyrannical way of thinking. While this is clear on one level to a modern audience, it would have carried a much greater depth to an Athenian audience. Having proudly dispensed with tyranny in favour of true democracy, Creon's insistence on his own authority would have a clear metaphorical reading to an Athenian audience, and one which they would hate. This would set the audience a difficult judgment. Creon is wrong because he is a tyrant, while Antigone is wrong because she is disrupting the social order. So who do you side with? However, Creon believes he is right because he is the de facto king, while Antigone believes that she is right because she is respecting the dead and the gods. Ultimately, Tiresias reveals that the gods side with Antigone, and in light of this, Creon becomes the character in defiance, and his stubbornness, his obstinacy, is an even clearer sign of tyranny. The fact that Tiresias is guided by a boy, by the way, it works as a sort of an additional, like a visual metaphor, showing the audience that it is possible for the young to lead the old, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, or at least the young are able to give valuable advice to the old. It's the clash of these two viewpoints which spurs the tragedy to its inevitable climax, and that climax really is inevitable from the instant that Antigone decides that she will bury her brother. Antigone is willful in the face of an absolute ruler. She knows that she faces the death penalty because Creon has stated that the punishment that awaits anyone in defiance of his order will be death. In addition, Antigone feels that her death is inevitable because her family is being repeatedly punished for the sins committed by her parents, Oedipus and Jocasta. Antigone's insistence on the burial of her brother is the spur of the drama. We learn from Tiresias that for all of the debatable legitimacy of the different points of view, that Antigone is in the right, in the view of the gods at least, while her rejection of Creon's law is occasionally petulant and childish, she is justified by the gods themselves. However, the tragedy relies upon the equal stubbornness of Creon, who is immovable, against Antigone, who rails against him. It is the meeting of these two unyielding points of view which take Antigone to her death, because as a young girl, she cannot defeat the will of an old man. As usual, if you need to get in touch with me or want to get in touch with me, Twitter at MrConnor1, website www.mrconnor.com. I hope this was useful. Thank you.